It's all your fault, and the sooner you can accept that, the sooner you will become successful. And I don't mean this in a self-improvement-y way that even other people's actions are your fault, because that's obviously not the case here. But there's something much deeper here which is driving the way your life is going, and I'm going to unveil that. For the past 2 years, I've been stagnant, more stagnant than I'd like to admit. And once I realized this, everything changed. Everything is your fault, and here's why. If you don't know, by the way, this is maybe behind Breaking Bad, the greatest show of all time, BoJack Horseman, and in this episode, Todd is telling BoJack that his excuses are not valid. Every time he says, it's because of the alcohol, it's because of the girls, it's because of this and that, it's not. It's because it's all his fault. And this is, if you haven't seen the show, you should fucking watch it, but it's one of the greatest representations of human nature I've ever seen. And it's by a fucking horse, so that's amazing. Where this whole notion of mine came from was in my previous place where I was staying at, in my previous flat. I was living with two people who, you know, they're good people and I wish the best for them, but they weren't on the same wavelength as me. They were fine with what I would consider mediocrity. Now, that's not any bad on their character. They're just like this, and that's totally fine. If they're happy with that, then I'm all the happiest fucking person for them. But the thing is, I wasn't. And that rubs off on you. Every single time you're in an environment, you have this constant force pushing you to assimilate, to pick up values of theirs, to be like them a bit more, because it's just the deepest thing in your psyche. It's just as human nature as things get. And I kept repeating this phrase to myself. The same hot water that softens a potato hardens the egg. This is from a Russian proverb, and it kept coming on to me, because every single time I started playing video games just because they were playing, I started, budgeting and, focusing on saving money instead of making more. I constantly felt like, no, I got to resist, I got to work harder, I got to stay locked in, even though my environment beside me isn't doing the same. And I kept telling myself, to be disciplined, and you can't soften up just because your environment's telling you to. And to some extent, that's correct. But let me tell you this: if you're in the same situation, have you had the intention to change? For a long time, have you had the intention to change? Because if so, if you had the intention, and time has passed, but nothing has changed, then what's the point? It's obviously your fucking environment. If you want it to change, and you've been wanting to change for a while, wanting to change a little bit harder isn't going to make a fucking difference. You can try to discipline yourself, you're not going to succeed every single day. And of course you can't change your situation just like that. I'm sorry, if you're in this situation, it sucks. I know it sucks because I was fucking in it. But the thing is, you gotta find a way out as soon as possible. Because I was still at fault, as the core message of this video, I was still at fault, but it was not what I thought I was at fault for. My problem was that I was blaming myself for this, that my environmental triggers had an effect on me. And I was telling myself that I shouldn't let them affect me. They were affecting me, and I thought that my fault was that I was letting them affect me, which isn't possible. For a prolonged period of time, if you don't have motivation to do something, or if you can't resist something, you're not going to discipline yourself to do so or to reject it in the long term. Eventually you're going to falter. My fault, the reason I'm still at fault for this, and the core message of this video still stands, is this. It's the whole equation. It's that I was letting this fucking begin in the first place. I was letting it begin for so long because I was convinced that I could just discipline myself and I could just resist. It doesn't make any sense. Just like the food or the liquids and the substances that you put in your body matter, so do the thoughts and so do the emotions, so does the energy. And although this kind of concept can sound very, very self-improvement-y and very toxic, like, oh, you're at fault for everything, it's not actually the action itself that you're at fault for, but letting the action even occur in the first place. So the best example I could give for this is I had this prolonged period of time, actually the flat before that, I've been moving around hella in the past few years, where I was kind of starting to begin to be passive-aggressive to my roommate. Our relationship wasn't at the top, I wasn't the best, we were being mean to each other, and that was because we kind of sensed this kind of passive-aggressive nature in our communication style. We weren't being the nicest to each other. And we kept blaming the other person, and none of us really took any initiative to resolve it or any responsibility. We were in this like chicken or egg scenario, and he was saying, yeah, but I didn't show up because you were being mean to me, and I don't really want to spend time with people like that. And I was like, I totally get it, but I was being mean to you because you don't fucking show up in the first place, because you're always late, because you're always like this. And we kept going back and forth, and you can imagine we never really got to a conclusion, because this isn't the problem. Someone who doesn't have this information might say that, oh, this is the problem and you have to fix it, and this is where I was stuck for so fucking long. But the truth is, it's not. The truth is where it stems from. The reason I'm being passive-aggressive with this person is because I have negative thoughts about them. I'm not passive-aggressive with my mother. I'm not passive-aggressive with my father. I'm not passive-aggressive with my best friend. So, obviously, it's for deeper reasons. It's because I had negative thoughts about this person, and I was fine with exuding that kind of negative energy towards them. And that was because we had unresolved issues. If I told them, and truth be told, I probably didn't even know this myself, so I had to do some soul searching before I could actually tell them. Before I actually got to the conclusion that, oh, this was because that time this happened, you really hurt me. And that really, I really don't think of you in a good light because of that. If I had the honesty and the fucking guts to be a bit vulnerable and bring that up, then all of this would be resolved. Because if I'm not feeling negative towards the person, I'm not going to be communicating in a negative way. And I'm not going to be being mean to that person. I'm not going to end up being mean. And we're not going to create this kind of toxic environment that's leading none of us to grow. Whenever you have a problem like this, and I promise I'm going to tie this all in, it's not just about communication styles and all that. It's never really because of your actions. People nowadays tell you that, oh, it's your actions and you should always be on top of your actions, but you don't want to act bad most of the time. You don't consciously think, okay, I'm going to fuck this up. I'm going to screw this person over. I'm going to be mean to this person. You don't think that. It's just that your actions arise from your thoughts and your emotions, and those rise from all of this other stuff. Of course, I could put genetics and previous experiences and stuff here, but if we're actually looking at it from more of a practical lens, things we can actually take action on, the stuff that will actually lead us to succeed in life, it's usually our traits, our skills, and our beliefs, with an emphasis on the last one. I acted in a negative way in this instance because I believed that this person I was speaking to wasn't worthy of me being positive towards him. I didn't think they were a good person. And in this example above, I believed that I was soft. I bought into this fucking self-improvement message that I have to discipline myself every day of the week, which is so untrue. Had I just got to acceptance earlier and I told myself, I'm not at fault for this. The only thing I'm at fault for is letting this happen to me, I would have gotten out of the situation so much sooner. And that is my final point in this video. It's a revelation I had, which, this is the whole thing that induced this kind of video thought in the first place and got me out of this rut I was in. I was watching Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO episode where he was in a solo episode, and he was reading personal revelations from his diary. And the point that this hit me like a ton of bricks was get to acceptance as fast as possible. What he means by this is, the grieving process. Actually, let me pull up an image. We only apply this notion of the 5 stages of grief when we actually lose a loved one or something significant happens. But this applies to so many areas of life, in my opinion. So first of all, we start with denial, then we move on to anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And the way this looks is, first of all, I was in denial that I was being passive-aggressive to this person. I was in denial that our relationship was bad. I started acting it out because obviously, you don't consciously control your thoughts. They just kind of come up and you start acting on them. And then I started realizing it. And I was angry at myself, at the other person. And I was like, no, it's your fault, da-da-da-da-da. And then I started bargaining. And I was like, honestly, yeah, this is your fault. Yeah, this was kind of the whole thing. I was being mean to him. And I started, that's when we started having these conversations about the chicken and egg scenario. I was like, oh, it's because of this, it's because of that. And only then did I realize that our relationship was never going to be the same. And I only came to accept that. Now I could, tackle the core thing. And if it is resolvable, try to resolve it. But in this instance, I went through all of these phases because I had to. Because our personality types didn't match. And I had to come to acceptance. And it took me so fucking long. This is what I don't want for you. You need to get to acceptance as fast as possible. And again, I don't just mean this in this type of way. When I was watching this video, I came to the conclusion that I dreaded for so long. And it's really, really personal. But the biggest thing that I kind of sat down and I started thinking, what do I need to get to acceptance to as soon as possible? And I accepted the fact that I'm a coward. I accepted the fact that I'm ruled by fear way more than I like to admit. And yeah. And the biggest reason I came to this conclusion is because as I was analyzing my life in the past few years, I've always been the person to take a step back whenever fear is pressing me. My whole life, actually. Like, the more I think about it, the more I can kind of understand this. Without getting too personal, really. It's just, every time I had to do outreach in business, I outsourced it or I skipped it because I didn't want to face the fear of rejection. Anytime I wanted to get a girlfriend, I went on Tinder and I got my gal from there instead of actually cold approaching and putting myself out there. Every single time I got criticism on the internet, I tried to make up with them even when they were so fucking wrong. It couldn't even be more of the case. And that's why I was always either self-sabotaging or not even getting into the situation in the first place, which could lead me to growth, just because growth is often behind the doors of rejection. I was a coward, and I had to face this fact. I was in these stages for so long. I was like, no, it's not true. I was like, yes, but you know, this, then that. And now I'm probably in this phase, or maybe even acceptance already. But man, it's tough. And this is what I kind of mean. It's this kind of stuff which will keep you away in business, because I went from the stages of, oh, it doesn't really matter that much, you know, I can always outsource it, I can always get someone else. Oh, it doesn't really matter that much because, you know, society is moving towards online dating anyway. And I was constantly coping, I was constantly bargaining. This is probably where I spent most of my time. And I was telling myself this stupid shit. And if I sat down and I told myself, listen, I've been ruled by fear my whole entire life. And that's the gateway through which I can actually self-actualize and get to the point where I want to be. It would hurt. Obviously, it would hurt. But I would transcend the realm that I'm operating in so much faster. So much faster, man. I also highlighted this sentence right here, in which Stephen says, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And I think this encapsulates it so perfectly, because life is going to happen to you. And this thing that you're grieving, whether it's actually like a tangible thing or just something like my instance of being a fucking pussy, you can pretend it's not here, and it's going to keep ruling your life because it's already here, just like the waves are crashing, you can't outthink a fucking wave. Or you can actually take into account that it's here, and you can realize that it's part of your reality now, and you can learn to surf it, you can learn to get through it. It's not going to be easy, but it's possible, unlike unimagining the waves. So I challenge you to sit down and really think this through. What are you not getting to acceptance to? The reason I started this video in the first place today, I was scheduled to make a different one, or at least I planned to make a different one, not that I operate off a fucking schedule. I was planning to make a different one because, honestly, I was reading the comments of one of my friends who does like online make money kind of thing. He went through the same kind of agency that I did, and now he's teaching other people how to do it. And he's one of the better YouTubers, honestly, because a lot of this space is like quite scammy. He actually makes really good videos and he's quite down to earth. So yeah, I'm proud of him in that sense. But he gets a lot of hate. And first of all, it only took me back to my being scared of hate and this point of me being a coward. But also another thing is, I saw this in so many people. A lot of the comments, as you can probably imagine, especially that like we're in a different country and people here are much poorer and have like much more limiting beliefs around money, they really come out, and he gets a lot of hate for it. About like half of the comments under his videos are always like the vilest shit ever, attacking his character, attacking his integrity, because it can't be true. It can't be true that he's young and he makes a lot of money. A lot of these people, it's kind of tough to say, but a lot of them are operating out of envy, pure and honest hatred and jealousy, because he is everything that they're not. And again, it might sound tough and it might sound harsh, but that's the truth. If that person who's leaving the hate comment didn't actually want what they're seeing, they just skip to the next video. They wouldn't be bothered, right? You're only bothered if it's true. And I clicked on one of these guys' profiles. He's severely obese, severely overweight, and he didn't look like at least he was making the money. I could be totally wrong on that point. But the reason I'm saying this is, if this guy just heard this message of getting to acceptance, of just sitting down on his own fucking thoughts and not drowning himself in instant gratification, and started to think about the place he needs to get to acceptance in, maybe he'd understand that he's just grieving not being at the point where he wants to be. He's just grieving the fact that he maybe isn't willing to pull the trigger. He isn't willing to face fear, just like I wasn't. And I'm hammering in this notion of, fear as the thing that I'm not trying to accept. But it could be something entirely different for you. It could be that the relationship you were hoping to get into maybe is never going to happen, and you need to accept that. or the fact that you're not going to make it in your career as a professional athlete because you're simply genetically not wired to be that. We spend years or maybe even lifetimes in these phases, and maybe we're going to tell ourselves that we can and we need to work harder, but life isn't fucking fair. I spent 2 years in bargaining that I can succeed without facing my fear. Had I accepted this much sooner and I got to acceptance and I was like, listen, I'm a pussy, I'm going to fix this as soon as possible, I wouldn't be where I am right now in a good way. I'm not telling you to give up on your goal. I'm not telling you to not pursue that relationship. I'm not telling you to do anything, quite frankly. What I am trying to get you to do is to sit down and see for yourself, because transformation only happens after you get to acceptance. So if you take one thing away from this video, remember this: it is your fault, but probably not in the way you think. You have triggers that are acting on you all the time, and you can't sustainably avoid these triggers. What you can do is understand why you're in the situation in which you're in. And once you get to the bottom of it, get to acceptance as soon as possible and fix the problem.